What's going on, Bucs fans? Welcome into our first edition of Tampa 2. I am team reporter Casey Phillips alongside staff writer Brianna Dix. And Brei, I am so excited to do this show with you.
I am too, and I love that we are both wearing red today.
Oh, yeah.
From Dallas, had to show the allegiance.
Exactly. We are two Dallas girls who are very much rooting for the Buccaneers this weekend. You actually just came from working from the Cowboys, in case people still don't know, because you are still newer to our team here.
Yes.
So, I mean, this is the perfect week to start off on the show. You're just the expert of all experts, knowing both of these teams.
Yeah, I will say I could not have scripted a better week one when the schedule release came out. I was like,
yes, this is perfect.
This is Brei's
what
game.
I've been training for.
I'm ready.
That's amazing. So yeah, we're going to be here every week. We are recording these on Friday mornings, and so there will obviously be still sometimes that things come out on injury reports or the things that we will be updated.
Right.
But for the most part, we want this to kind of be that last look at the team leading into the next game. We're going to cover all of the different topics, and as always, if there are any things you guys want us to talk about, make sure you send it into our social media, shoot us some messages, and we'll try to get to some of those topics. So for right now, for this week one, let's just start out with some keys to the game. As you look at this week one matchup that is exactly the same matchup as week one of last year, which is so interesting. What are the biggest keys to a Buccaneers victory in your mind?
I think one of the biggest things with the kind of reshuffle with the Bucs offensive line, you have a new interior with Robert Hainsey stepping in for Ryan Jensen. You have a rookie starting at left guard in Luke Gedeke. And then you have Shaq Mason, who has those ties to Tom Brady. But we all know that Dan Quinn is going to bring the blitz. You're probably going to see some Micah Parsons rushing the passer through the A and B gap. So I think starting fast, getting the ball out quick, but also being able to run the football and being balanced, I think, is going to be key, because you know that they're going to try and bring that quickly, so you want to mitigate the pass rush. But I think also it's how do you get Rob Gronkowski's contribution, because he was kind of that go-to for Tom,
the safety
over
blanket.
the middle of the field. Yeah. For those quick passes, and whether or not Chris Godwin plays, he's also kind of one of those guys that gets the yards after catch, is good at catches in traffic. So it's who steps in? Is it going to be Russell Gage that kind of has a big game out of the slot? And I think that'll be interesting in that as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think the slot guy will be important. I think that we are going to be intriguing to see Kyle Rudolph. What does he look like? Because, of course, when he's brought in, everyone's like, oh, this is the Gronk replacement. And, yes, in terms of maybe a roster spot, but I don't think they expect him to be exactly Gronkowski. They've talked about that it's going to be a replacement by committee almost.
Yeah.
And even guys like Julio Jones, they're talking about him being a bit of a Gronk replacement, that, even a Rashad White, trying to get him more involved in the pass catching game, that it's going to be a bunch of people trying to make up for all of it, instead of just saying, it would be unfair to say to any one person, hey, go be Rob Gronkowski.
Yeah.
Hey, go have the chemistry with Tom Brady that they've had for a decade together, So I think that that's going to be interesting to watch, how you can just get little contributions from different people. And I agree with you. I think that it was interesting watching the Thursday night game, that it felt like the way the Bills offense handled things was, and you even heard Chris Collinsworth say, man, this almost looks like a way a Tom Brady would want to lead an offense. It was a lot of the short passes and getting the ball out of the hand quickly, because they were facing an Aaron Donald. And I think that can be, no matter how you feel about your offensive line, that's going to be a good strategy. It's something Brady's always enjoyed. And especially when, to your point, it is a new look offensive line, where even though I know they feel very confident in it, it is still new. They are still getting the chemistry with each other. And it's always good to get that vote of confidence right out of the gate for them. That, again, running the ball getting some of those yards, some of the quick passes, to get into the flow, to give them that confidence, especially guys like a rookie, where your first game, you're protecting Tom Brady on Sunday Night Football. No big deal. Everything is fine. Yeah, everything is fine. And I remember even Tristan Wirfs talked about that of his first game, that they were all telling him, like, yeah, you're just protecting the most important football player ever. If he dies, it's your fault. And Tristan was like,
thanks.
Cool, awesome, thanks. I'm sure that's kind of how they feel. But how about maybe, we talked a little bit about this in this first question, but a position group or a player that you're most excited to watch?
I'll start with player, and I would say just specifically in my mind, it's Tryon Shoginka. He has had an absolutely phenomenal camp. And I think, going back to last year, in order to try and maximize his time on the field as a rookie, they had him everywhere. You had him rushing as a 3-tech, a 5 technique. You had him as an off-ball linebacker. But now he's going to get to specialize as just kind of that stand-up outside linebacker opposite Shaq Barrett. And I think one of the things that he does great is that he just knows how to get leverage, and he'll make the D end overstep to the outside, and then he's able to come back inside and get to the quarterback. And I think that's one of the great things he does against tackles. And so I'm excited to see what he looks like in an actual game setting, and what he puts on tape. And then for the most exciting position group, I would say is safety.
That's interesting. Tell me why.
Because there's been so much rotation and so many guys moving around. You added in Keanu Neal, you added in Logan Ryan, and you have so much versatility. Logan Ryan has experience playing both safety, playing nickel corner, and I think that's kind of freed up Antoine Winfield Jr., who's typically been kind of that free safety with his awareness kind of over the top of the defense. But now he's been an absolute menace near the line of scrimmage, playing kind of that nickel position. And whether that's blitzing, whether it's, outpacing rushers to the sideline, I think he's going to have a really big game. So I'm excited to see how that all shakes out.
That is interesting. I think that the combination of the corner safety group like that is going to be interesting to see, because we know Bowles loves doing unique things, and he also loves keeping the offense guessing at what your defense is going to be doing. And he loves players, therefore, that can do a lot of things, so that just by them being out there, that doesn't give away what you're doing. And we've seen, and so we've seen the way, like you mentioned about the Antoine Winfield being at nickel, and even guys like Logan Ryan also being able to do that, and then Keanu Neal kind of coming from Cowboys playing linebacker. That's already 3 guys in the safety room that are playing kind of some different positions as well. And then you see how Jamel Dean now, according to this last depth chart, has won the outside job, where then how much are you seeing Sean Murphy-Bunting at nickel versus some of those other guys, and just the way that all of that rotation will work. And Mike Edwards, who gets an interception every time he steps on the field, how much more is that by moving some of these other safeties occasionally into nickel, letting him also be on the field? It's just going to be so interesting to see how all of those guys get used, and how that could wreak some havoc for the offense, being like, I don't know what's happening. Look at all these people. And same thing with what you mentioned with Tryon Shoginka. Last year, they were kind of using him that way, where all of a sudden he's kind of dropping back, and we're like, wait, what is he playing right now? What is going on? And I think it will be beneficial for him to maybe play a little bit more traditional outside linebacker, let some of those other guys be the ones who are nickel and then down and then back, and let him now in this next year of his career be a little bit more traditional. And this is going to be a good game, I think, for him to get those good vibes started, when now they're missing Tyrone Smith. I mean, man, that's going to be huge. That in some ways the Cowboys mirror the Bucs at where some of their injuries are. And I think, but the Bucs, it's more the interior of the offensive line, but the Cowboys, it's that tackle position that's a little more uncertain. And so that Shaq Barrett and Tryon Shoginka are like,
licking the chops,
ready to go.
And like you mentioned, I think for the Bucs, it's also going to be interesting to see how Todd Bowles kind of game plans this. But I do think they will be certainly attacking that left side of the Dallas line, because you have Tyler Smith, a rookie, starting for them in place of Tyron Smith, expected at left tackle. And then you've got Connor McGovern at left guard, who's new coming in this year. So I'm very excited for Joe Tryon versus Tyler Smith.
And then, what we haven't even talked about yet, and I realize I might even be changing my answer now to what I am most excited to watch in terms of position group. It's going to be the D-line. Especially as we just talked about this with the Cowboys offensive line.
Akeem Hicks
Akeem Hicks and Vita Vea together, which combines for 700 pounds.
Yeah.
I mean, good grief. And
eating up blockers and letting the linebackers eat.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, man, and shameless plug, just did an interview with Akeem Hicks yesterday. It's not up yet. It's going to be up soon, but delightful person. And we discussed him and Vita together. First of all, fun fact, they're also 2 of the heaviest NFL players ever to score touchdowns. So I will be lobbying for them to get offensive snaps. I've been lobbying this for Vita all the time anyway, but now there's 2 of them. And I'm just like, please, I love any big man touchdowns are the best thing in the whole wide world. So not only are they potential offensive threats, which I love this, but I mean, the 700 pounds up in the middle. And I think about what they could do, the havoc they could wreak, but especially what they could set up for Devin and Levante. Yes. That Devin and Levante are just going to be sitting back there like, look at this. They're just taking up all stuff. And they're going to be taking up all these double teams, which is going to let one of them shoot through there and get some of their, sacks, get some of their fun numbers that we know, those tackles for loss that they're so good at. So, yeah, I think watching the two of them together and then alongside Will Golston, I think it'll set him up to be able to play more of his game. I think he's one of the most underrated guys on the Bucs roster for what he's contributed to this franchise for so long, and he's been asked to do so many different things and change his body, and it's a 4-3 and it's a 3-4 and you're this and you're this, and he's always stepped up to whatever he's been asked to do, and now it feels like this defense is made for him, and with those guys in the middle, it feels like he's just going to get to finally be like, yes, I get to do all my things. Like, I just think that whole D-line is going to be interesting, and then to see Logan Hall, where he fits in with that, I mean, he's not a first-round pick, but he's essentially a first-round pick. If we're gonna, you have to call it that. Yeah,
I feel like I constantly have to tell myself that because you forget, and it just becomes second nature.
It's close enough.
Technically, it was actually nature.
We'll treat it like an 89.5 and round it up. Like we'll just round him up into a first-round pick. But to have that as your rotation guy coming in is amazing. I think to watch him try to get some pass rushing snaps. He's looked pretty good in camp so far, some of those one-on-ones. I think that just the D-line in general, I'll be really intrigued to watch that and maybe hopefully watch how Akeem and Vita can make each other better.
Yeah. Well, and I think to that point, that honestly might sway the game a little bit because last year, the Cowboys, with the Bucs' ability to stop the run and just kind of how they've been predicated on that, the Cowboys didn't even try. I mean, Dak threw it 58 times, which is absolutely that's almost unprecedented in the NFL now. But with their injuries at their wide receiver core, that's definitely not going to be the game plan this time around. Yeah. So if the Bucs can force them to be one-dimensional and can shut down Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard, and force them to throw it, I think that might be the victory.
And we've seen
this game.
the Bucs run stopping ever since Todd Bowles got here. Right. Outrageous. And so, if you're to know again that like they're looking at a team where they're going to feel like they have to run and knowing that they know how good the Bucs are at stopping that, I think that's going to be great. It's interesting you brought up their wide receiver core. Both teams, again, we talked about the parallels at where some of the injuries are and some of the questions and whatnot. So Michael Gallup and Chris Godwin feels very parallel.
Yes.
And I think that both are incredibly important to their teams. And as of taping this, we still don't know if either of them are going to go. What do you think that would mean for each team if Chris Godwin plays? How much do you think they use him? How do they use him? Just some of the ways that, if he doesn't play, then that's already a huge factor. Right. And maybe we get to see more of Julio Jones and what that looks like. Not bad when that's your bench guy to replace him. But Michael Gallup playing, how that would affect the Bucs' defensive plans, and then Chris Godwin playing, how that would affect them.
I definitely don't anticipate Michael Gallup playing for the Cowboys, so I think it's going to be a combination of, and I'm loving the parallels because even when you think of that, when we drafted Rachaad White, he is Tony Pollard, essentially. Like the same skill set, like the shiftiness in space, like the acceleration, the ability to hit top speed almost instantaneously, but also kind of make guys miss and a little bit of that shifty, the post cut, the burst. So I think they're going to use Tony Pollard more in the passing game for Dallas, but also getting, Dalton Schultz involved, getting CeeDee Lamb. You've got Noah Brown for them, who's typically been more of a run blocker, kind of the inline guy to kind of open things up in the passing game, in the running game. And I think they're going to use him more. And then also Simi Fayoko and Dennis Houston will also probably be incorporations for them. And then for the Bucs, like you said, we still don't know about Chris Godwin. I think it's going to be more of a game time decision in a collective kind of agreement between, okay, how is Chris Godwin feeling? Because like he mentioned in open locker room yesterday, with ACL injuries, it's different every day. Right. Just because he feels great today and the knee feels sturdy and he's making the movements, he's making the jumps, that's not necessarily how he's going to feel on Sunday. Every day has a mind of its own.
And you can't hit him below the waist. You're not going to do that.
Yeah, you can't simulate that.
You're not going to do that. You're not going to risk that in practice. And so until it happens in a game, He won't know.
Right.
The Bucs won't know.
And Todd Bowles as well.
Yeah.
What are the doctors saying, or have the doctors cleared him yet?
Mm-hmm.
So all of that. But I do think the beneficial thing is that, which interesting enough, like he said it was just like, that's an amazing mindset and way to look at this. But since his was a contact injury where he took the hit through the legs by PJ Williams of the Saints, that he's like, I'm not worried about going back out there and running routes anymore like a person would that had
a non-contact,
injury where
everything
they
could be a
made
problem.
that shift and that change of direction, and then it just was a freak thing and it happened. He's like, I'm not worried about running. I'm not worried about cutting. When I get that hit and I get my first one, I'm good.
Then
let's go play ball, and that's it.
It's going to be interesting because he talked about how, I think it was a podcast he was on where he said how much more important he thought it was for him to be available later in the season,
stretch,
which I agree. And again, especially when you look at the depth chart, Julio Jones is your
Russell
guy coming.
Gage, yeah.
Russell Gage. All these, like, we're fine when it comes to wide receivers.
Exactly.
So there is a part of me that's like, yeah, you know what, be so much more safe than sorry. And even to see what else this offense can look like without him, when you already know what Chris Godwin brings.
Right.
Get Kyle Rudolph more, targets. Get Julio Jones more targets. Get Russell Gage more targets. All these new guys that are developing that chemistry with Brady, we're figuring out how exactly to deploy everybody. I kind of like the idea of Godwin, like letting those other guys get a chance. And I think that in the long run, that could help the Bucs out offensively. Mm-hmm. And again, whether it is Godwin not playing now and how great it is to have those guys be the ones that are taking the snaps, or it's that then you're getting to have Chris Godwin come in a little bit later in the year at whatever point that is, of like to have these reinforcements and be healthier in the long run. I think that's going to be really interesting. All right, how about we've talked about a lot of the rookies, but let's kind of focus on them as a group. What are the expectations that you have for some of these rookies going in week one? How much you think they're going to contribute, how successful they'll be, and based sort of on your impressions of them so far through preseason?
Well, I guess I'll start with Luke Gedeke, who's going to have the biggest role. Todd Bowles confirmed earlier in this week that he is going to start at left guard. Yeah, no pressure.
No big deal.
Protecting Tom Brady,
Everything's fine.
the greatest of all time. But I think the biggest thing for him is he has such a small sample size at guard. He played right tackle in college at Central Michigan. So now it's converting from the right side of the line to the left side, which he was a natural fit. They had him at right tackle out of necessity. Mm-hmm. But with his anchor in pass protection, his pad level. But I think the biggest thing for him is just the coordination and the hand placement and pass sets. He's told me that he even started writing left-handed to try and train his mind, train the body. But he's like, it's like throwing a football with your non-dominant hand. Right. So you're having to transition everything. But I'm excited to see how this all comes together for him, and what a rare opportunity. You're in the NFL and Tom Brady's behind you.
Yeah, that's everybody's dream.
You can't get any better. Anything
Sunday
better
Night
than
Football first starting. It's just going to be incredible. I think that a rookie we've kind of forgotten about what an impact he could make is Jake Camarda.
Yeah.
This is a guy that, incredible college career, to be taking kickoffs and punts and then being your holder. This is going to be very important. I think it'll be interesting to see. We've seen already in preseason, very powerful leg. Yes. I know that the special teams coverage in preseason was not what everybody hoped. So I think special teams in general will be interesting to see how it looks now week one when you're actually playing your starting special teams unit. A lot of that was guys that maybe aren't even on the roster anymore. And so to see what this group looks like and how maybe Jake can alter some of the things that he tries to do, or what we see from his directional punting, does he have maybe a little more hang time? There were a couple line drives in there. Does he have the hang time where that can help some of the coverage units? So I think that's going to be interesting to watch. And then of course, Rachaad White, now we know he has won the kickoff return job. Yeah. And with both punt and kick returns, this has been an area that the Bucs have wanted more splash plays in. And he seems like a guy that is a fan of the splash play.
Little Tony Pollard.
It's going to be, so I think that it'll be fun to watch him and to have Jalen Darden have another year under his belt in the return game. I think that it's not even so much that things went wrong. It's not like there were all these fumbles or things like that. It was just, it wasn't producing. And it is hard nowadays. It just feels like when it comes to kick returns, there are so few returns, so few opportunities for it with all of the new rules. But I just hope that we get to see Rachaad White break one or two. I think that would just
like
be.
50,
I think that would be right.
It would be tremendous.
So, all right, we'll kind of close with this. Biggest concerns for you heading into week 1, now that we've seen all of preseason and training camp, we have the final 53, we see the health of the team, we have all this kind of to look at. What are the biggest things that maybe even not concerns, but just question marks that you have looking at week 1?
I think first, and even though this coaching staff has reiterated over and over their confidence level with the offensive line, I mean, just when you're looking at it on paper, that besides Shaq Mason, but with Robert Hainsey and Luke Gedeke, I mean, these are guys that are unproven at this point, and you're going to be relentlessly targeted through that interior. So I think just the holdup of the offensive line and how this fares is going to be huge in this game. You know, how their offense, how the synergy is, how that continuity is up front, how teams play against them, how they're able to get the offense going, how if they're able to use the quick passing game, if they're able to get the run game going, if they're able to create that balanced attack. And then also on the defensive side, I think a lot of people, we get so caught up in some of the offensive changes, not having Rob Gronkowski, you had Ali Marpet's retirement, you had Alex Kappa leaving in free agency, but also on the defensive side, like, you don't have Sue anymore, you don't have JPP, you now have Joe Tryon, you have new faces in the secondary that are coming in, and there's been so much rotation that I'm interested to see how all of that pans out, and if they are able to keep Dallas's offense one-dimensional, if they are able to stop the run and to kind of have that top-tier run defense that these teams have had in the past, you know. But I do think I'm very excited to see, because like Dan Quinn for the Cowboys, Todd Bowles also has kind of that reputation for creating those advantageous one-on-one matchups. And I think a guy like Logan Hall can have a really big game, you know, kind of keeping Akeem Hicks, his legs fresh, and then adding in him to create those one-on-one matchups up front. So I'm excited to see what ends up happening.
Yeah, I think I'm excited to watch the tight end group overall. That to see Cade Otton, as we talked about the rookies, I want to see what he can bring in the pass game. And then Ko Kieft, this is a dude that just loves to block people, you know, just loves to block people, and to see how he can impact things as well. And then what does Kyle Rudolph look like?
Yeah.
We know this is a guy with an incredible career and has done so many incredible things. Also off the field, great human, just so many incredible donations to children's hospitals. He's got his foundation he works through. It's just amazing. But to see what he can do, on the field, of where is he at in his career, and I loved how he talked about he was basically being a pest to Tom Brady early on, of like, tell me everything about what you want me to do. I want to know exactly how you want me to run this route, asking question after question after question after question, that he is not a guy that just because he's been in the league a long time is like, well, this is how I've done it. That he wants to know. He said, I want to try to be where I have the kind of chemistry with him that Gronk did after 10 years. He's like, I'm trying to cram all of that into this preseason. Tell me every little thing. So to see how that has formed, and I'm sure it'll continue to improve throughout the season, but how much progress were they able to make on that in the preseason, I think is going to be really interesting to watch. So yeah, that whole tight end group. And of course, Cam Breit, this guy who just has continued to be a great red zone threat. Hopefully, I think he's maybe a little healthier than he's been in a bit. He's dealt with a bunch of injuries over the course of his career that weren't necessarily things that kept him out, but just kept him from being peak Cam. So to now watch he and Kyle Rudolph out there, and then throw in some Cade Otton, throw in some blocking Ko Kieft, I think that group is going to be fun to see. So, all right, well, I think that is going to do it for us on our first edition of Tampa 2. Great job, Bree. I'm so excited about this whole season.
Oh, yeah.
And thanks to all of you guys for tuning in for our first edition. Again, we'll be back here every single week. You got topics you want us to discuss, throw it our way on social media. We'll see you next time.